Well, I've fitted a different spring, which is much more lively, and we'll see how that behaves. The original spring seemed to be too long. It had no tension at all at the closed position. And the arm was all the way in, there was no tension at all. Well, it's still reluctant to pull it in. There's too much resistance in this movement here somewhere in this parallax correction. Alright, I think this arm here was pushed down a little bit and was rubbing on the bottom part here. I think that's a possible source of problems. It's also possible that there's a bit of roughness in that coupling. Alright, that seems good enough now. I'll fit it to the camera and I'll put my other components back on it once it's in the camera. Just checking that it's coupled. Generally speaking, rangefinders are refitted with the focus set to the infinity position, not the close focus position. Generally that's the way to do it. The screw's a bit awkward to get in because it's down in a pocket. No, I'm not seeing any action there. The arm can't be correctly positioned. It certainly was before I did my screws up. molybdenum paste on the back of this cam surface that arm runs on for the rangefinder. Let's try putting this in place once more. It should be in place. Nothing's coupling. Yep. Now it is. It was not sitting in position. That's better. Get the other two screws in. I think that the different spring I put in there was pulling the arm back further to the rest position, making it difficult for it to couple back over the arm on the camera. Right, let me check that. It's definitely working. The images don't meet at infinity and the moving image is lower. I think that if I move my front group here, this lens here, slightly, that I will get my alignment of my vertical alignment of my images. I think that's the thing to do. I'm going to take this off so I've got access to both screws for this. Can I get that uncoupled? Yes. Right. I suspect if I loosen these two screws off, move that lens down slightly and check and see what happens. Now my moving image is too high. That's about what I expected. Let's see if I can. Oh, don't need to move it that much. That is just about right, so I'll get that locked there. There are adjustments for adjusting the height of your vertical image, but it started off good. It should be pretty good when you're finished. That's about right. Now my horizontal adjustment's out. It doesn't come all the way back to infinity. So I'm checking the action of this. Infinity, it comes into there. Let's just try slackening that screw off. No, that's not doing it. It's not moving all the way back. There's another adjustment here. Oh yes, there's an adjustment here for horizontal adjustment, and I think that's my the one I've got to go for. I must pivot at that point, and this will be the lock screw. And I need a tool to swing that across. Well, I've had an entertaining time getting the adjustments correct on this rangefinder. But here is the news regarding the vertical adjustment. That's adjusting the rangefinder images so they align vertically, so they're on the same plane. You'll see there's a lock screw at the back here in this position. You loosen that screw, and this screw here, turn that up or down and it'll raise or lower that lens, and you'll see your images align vertically. Now your horizontal adjustment, your infinity adjustment, that's at this point. There's a screw head visible there. You can make your adjustment there. Now that gives you a fairly fine adjustment. Usually that's all that's required. You can have lots of fun if things have been disturbed. There's another adjustment here that you can make for horizontal alignment. That's a coarse adjustment. If you get that in the wrong position, you'll find that the rangefinder will not track the movement of the focus scale at both ends of the scale. It may work at the infinity end, it may not work at the close focus end. So be very cautious about playing with that coarse adjustment there. You can get yourself into a bit of strife, as I discovered for myself. So far so good. I'm just going to blow the dust out of this and start putting back my frame thing here, and get everything else back on the camera. Once I've done that, I've simply got to clean the top cover and pop that back on the camera. So the first thing I want to attempt is to get this coupled back on here again correctly. Just checking the position of the arm. It's got to get back in this little groove down in here. I think I should be able to tip it into place. Yes, I can. That's good. I need to get the two fixing screws in position. Just trying to get this centered up around the window here, the rangefinder window, just getting it centered on there. That looks good. Check the action of the parallax correction, see if those frames are moving. They only come in fairly late in the piece. Is that jamming things up? That appears to be jamming my rangefinder. That appears to be working now. I'll check that. No, my rangefinder's not working correctly. There is a separate adjustment for this parallax correction on the rangefinder arm. Of course, it's only accessible with the rangefinder off the camera. Bugger. Well, I'm sad to say that the rangefinder adjustment and cleaning process did not go at all smoothly. It turned out that there were serious problems with that rangefinder and the particular camera I'd started on, which was this one, the one with the rattle. And I spent hours and hours just chasing my tail on that one. Basically, there's too many adjustments. Now, somebody had been into this camera on previous occasions and they'd made a mess of it. But the adjustment here on this rod, the rod that runs out of the back of the piece here, that was the number one problem. That was the first of the problems. And the problem there was that the rod was screwed in too far. And basically what that meant was that this piece here was too short, so that it just didn't move the rangefinder at the top of the camera correctly. And it meant that the sector on the top there, that wedge was in the wrong position basically. So it wouldn't couple with the rangefinder correctly because it was in the wrong position. So I had to discover what this was, and I spent a fair bit of time taking the shutter in and out of the camera body and adjusting the position of this 1 or 2 turns at a time until I had that working correctly, where the wedge at the top of the camera, that curved wedge, was sitting in roughly the right position. And then I had all the fun of making the rangefinder itself work, because of course the previous person had obviously adjusted it the best they could to work with the problem that they'd created down here. So I had to undo all their hard work and try and get it back to working normally. Now the complication, or the biggest complication with this, was that here you have the selected frame lines for the different chosen lens that you've got on there. That's easy enough, but it's got parallax correction, and the parallax correction is coupled to the rangefinder. Getting the parallax correction adjusted correctly required adjusting an arm inside the rangefinder, and I discovered that the whole parallax correction frame piece on the front of the rangefinder there needed to be positioned correctly too. There was a lot of slop in how that thing was positioned. It wasn't pinned in a particular place, so you could move it up or down, backwards or forwards, until you had it at the desired position, so that as you moved the lens through the focus range, the parallax correction moved smoothly. If the arm was set incorrectly in one position, you would find that the focus would actually stop. The rangefinder would stop moving as you approached either the infinity end of the scale or the close focus end of the scale. So getting the position of this correct, the physical position of that mechanism correct on the front of the rangefinder, and getting the adjustment of the arm underneath it, which couples to the rangefinder mechanism, and getting the rangefinder itself with the horizontal and vertical alignment correctly placed, took me much longer than I had envisaged. The second camera went much smoother, and of course I was able to use that as a guide to getting my first camera working correctly. So you didn't get to see the end of the rangefinder servicing with those particular cameras, but they're done. But I do have this one. Now this was the camera that was sent to be used for spare parts. Now this is the earlier Ambi-Flex, and as you can see it's got a smaller window at this point that's got the frames visible in it rather than this larger window. There are other differences with the camera, as I discovered, and one of them is the frame counter. The frame counter on the earlier camera is an additive counter. They look much the same, you wouldn't pick the difference between them, but the one on the earlier camera counts upwards. So you start at frame number 1 and the next frame is number 2. The later camera decreases the count, it counts back down towards 1. Now it doesn't lock the film advance at number 1 like a retina would, but it certainly has a red mark at number 1 to let you know basically that you've got back there. So that's a difference between the two. I can also tell you that the rangefinders in these two cameras are quite different too. I checked that because I was thinking that it would be a clever idea once I discovered that rangefinder on camera number 2 was in a lot less than ideal condition and might be virtually impossible to get sorted out. I decided, well, I could always take the one out of my spare parts camera and put that in there. It wasn't to be the case. The rangefinders are different. It's more than just this frame lines arrangement here, unfortunately. It was quite different. The cam on the top of the camera that couples to the rangefinder was different. So there were certainly major differences there, even though the cameras look much the same. And from a practical point of view, they work much the same. So, what will I do with the spare parts camera? Well, I suppose I could just send it back untouched, but that would hardly be much fun, would it? So I think that I'll probably service this and it can go back with the other two to their owner. This one does work. The rangefinder is only slightly out of adjustment. The shutter speeds are only slightly slow. And this one I hope will be a straightforward job.